Okay. Does anybody know how many countries there are in the world? Anybody? Anybody? How many countries? Take a guess. Wait, don't tell me. Jaginder, how many? 137. Higher. Anybody else? Nobody? Holy, you guys are going to have to talk more if this class is going to work. I don't like talking this much. Well, I do like to talk a lot, but I like it when you guys talk back. But never mind, I'll tell you. There's 192 countries in the world. Every country in the world measures stuff. We agree, right? I mean, we measure stuff all the time. 189 of those countries measure stuff the smart way, like we do. 3 of those countries measure things the stupid way, like the Americans do. If any of you are American, I'm not saying Americans are stupid. I'm saying the way you choose to measure things is stupid. Those 3 countries are America, which is sad because we're right attached to them, so we have to do what they do. The huge, powerful country of Burma, or Myanmar, depending on which you want to call it. It's actually Burma, but the military junta that is in charge of it has renamed it Myanmar. But that's a social studies lesson. That's an R301, not A301. And Liberia, a tiny country in Africa that was created so freed slaves from the United States could go back to Africa where they came from. Those 3 countries in the world choose to use the imperial system. Sadly, we are attached to America, so we have to learn that system as well. However, we use the metric system for everything else. So, I will teach you both because, of course, we need to know both. The first system is the imperial system. Now, you can write this down. You cannot write it down. You can just listen and not write a thing and watch the videos later. I don't care how you learn. You learn how you learn, okay? If you don't want to write down all my notes, don't. But, if you don't then watch the video later, it's a little complicated. The imperial system is basically the United States, okay? How do the Americans measure stuff? Miles. What's another one? Inches. Feet. How tall are you? You all know in feet and inches. You don't know how tall you are in centimeters, unless you're from another country. How do they measure weight? Pounds. None of you know your weight in kilograms. Okay. The imperial system is stupid. Why is it stupid? What is the imperial system based upon? Does anybody know? How did they decide how long a foot was? Hint, it's in the name. Feet. Why is that stupid? Well, you're a tall guy, right? How big are your feet? You don't know what size shoe you wear, Rajan? You wear a 10? I wear an 8.5. I know I have tiny little feet. Don't joke about it. It's hurtful. If we measured feet with my feet and we measured feet with his feet, who wins? Well, I would win because my feet are smaller, right? So this room would be bigger if we used my feet, yeah? Right? So it's stupid. It's based upon body parts. And that's dumb because everybody has different sized body parts. Back in the day, it was the king that made the decision, which was great if the king was a midget, but not great if the king was really, really gigantic, right? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually one of the reasons why we changed measurement topics. But again, that's a social studies discussion. In regular math, when I have all year, I would tell you that whole long story. But in summer school, I don't have time, unless I tell it really, really fast like this, and then that's no fun for anybody. Body parts, stupid. That's the long and the short of it. The other thing you have to remember, based upon. Math, what is the language of math? Language. What do we use in math? Numbers, right? How do we count in math? How do we count? If I asked you all to count like it was grade 3, what would we do? Okay, I know that some of you haven't done math since January, but I'm asking you to count. Like that guy from Sesame Street. 1 day of summer school. 2 days of summer school. We can all count, right? Okay, good. Just checking. How do we count? How many numbers do we have? We have 10 numbers. What are they? No, not 1. 0 up to what? 9. We count 0 to 9. We have 10 numbers. It's the only numbers we have, right? And we use those numbers to show everything else. That's how we count, right? So wouldn't it make sense if we measured things the way we counted? Up to 10s? These guys do not. That's a B, not a D. Do not use 10 as the basis, which is stupid. All right. What's the other system called? You all call it the metric system. Is that really its name? Does anybody know? That's not its name. We call it the metric system, but it is really called the Système International because it's French. And there's an accent grave in there somewhere. Anybody from Moet French Immersion? Somewhere in there's one of these accents. I think it's there. I don't care. This isn't a French class. It is abbreviated as SI, but we call it metric. And this is the entire world, except those 3 little countries. Well, I mean, the United States isn't little, but you know what I mean. The funny thing about the United States, everybody that's important in the United States uses the metric system. The Army, the Navy, all the measurement, NASA, everybody that does anything in the United States that isn't a regular person uses metric. But whatever. What's it based upon? It's not based on body parts. What's it based upon? So this is out. It is based upon 10. And that's why metric works, because no matter what you're measuring, weight, volume, length, anything, it's always in chunks of 10, just like we count. Okay? It's like counting. And it doesn't matter what it is. You could be doing weight, which we use grams. You could be doing distance, we use meters. You could be doing volume, we use liters. It doesn't matter. Now, in the real world, outside of Canada, they use more than these measurements. But these are the measurements we use in Canada, yes? These are all SI measurements. Millimeter, centimeter, meter, kilometer. One of those is what we call the base measurement that everything else is based on. Which of those is the base? Millimeter is the smallest. Jaginder? Did you have or you just moved your hand? Nobody can tell me what the base is there? Right. Meter is the base. Why? How can meter be the base when it's in the middle of that? Base is the bottom. Why is meter the base? It's in every single one. Everything else is a fraction of a meter. How long is a meter? Does anybody know? Somebody always says 100 centimeters there. So then I say, how long is a centimeter? And then they say, 1/100th of a meter. Shut up. Does anybody know how long a meter is? Interesting. There's your first homework question. Whoever comes to me tomorrow with the proper definition of how long a meter is, I will give you a gummy bear. First bit of homework. We'll leave it at that. It is the base because it is in every one. Exactly right. Millimeter. That is 1/1000th of a meter. Because because it was invented in France, we use the French words. Milli. Now you guys already know those from previous classes and from computer stuff. So what's a centimeter? What's cent in French? Or in money? How many cents in a dollar? 100. That's 100th. And that's a centi. And then this is 1,000. And it's a kilo. Now again, those are the numbers that we use. We measure stuff with those four. But in the rest of the world, there's stuff in between milli and centimeter. Right here is decimeter. Sorry. It's here between centi and meter. There's a decimeter. That is 1/10. Please notice 1,000th, 1/100th, 1/10. And then between meter and kilometer, there's two. There's deca, which is 10 meters, and there is hecto, which is 100 meters, and then kilo, which is 1,000. Please notice it's all 10. Now, if we're always multiplying or dividing by 10, it's easy to convert between them, right? Because all we do is move the decimal place. We'll get to that later, but that's why this is here. Does anybody know what that word means? Referent. Does anybody see a word that's in there that you do know what it means? No one? You'll start talking sooner or later. I have faith. That has the word refer in it. What do I mean if I refer to something? Silence. A teacher's best friend. None of you can refer to anything. That's okay. You'll change. You'll start talking sooner or later. That's fine. I understand. A referent is something you would use to guess these distances, because you may not be carrying a tape measure. The reason we do this is because when we start doing calculations with these numbers, you're going to do a lot of math. And your calculator, because you're going to use your calculator, is going to give you an answer. And all of you are going to write down the answer that is on your calculator screen, even if it makes no sense. Why? Because you will say, the calculator said so. Even if the answer is completely stupid and can't possibly be right, you'll write it down. And I will say, why would you write that? And you'll say, like I said, because my calculator said so. The reason I'm giving you these is so you can make sense of your answer. So even though you don't actually measure something, all of you have things that you could use in your mind to guess these distances. All right? Can anybody think of something that you have upon you right now that would be a good guess for how thick a millimeter is? How thick? I just gave it away. How long a millimeter is? Right. No one's going to talk for a couple of periods. Anybody? Okay. I can just talk. This is about the thickness of a fingernail. So if you do a bunch of work in millimeters and you're talking about the thickness of something very, very small, or a very small length, and you get an answer of 10,000 millimeters, would you write that answer down? If I'm asking you to tell me the distance between, I don't know, yes, what size headphone jack you need? Would you tell me that answer if you did a bunch of work for it? You said, oh yeah, it's 100 millimeters wide. Does that make any sense? Even if your calculator told you. That's why I'm telling you this. You're going to use these to make sure your answers make sense before you hand them in. With me? All right. Okay, now that you've seen this, maybe somebody could tell me what a good referent for a centimeter is. A centimeter being 10 millimeters. Most kids say the same thing. All right, it's going to be like that. That's fine. Usually they say width of a pinky. Anybody want to try for a meter? Fair enough. A meter is usually about a step. What makes kilometer difficult to do a referent? What is the same with all of these? Yeah, you can guess with your body, just like the old idiots that made up all the imperial measurements did. But no party is a kilometer long. So how could we guess how long a kilometer is, Jack? Good. 1,000 steps. Nice. Or, now this is a little harder because every kid here that I teach at Abbey says it's about like walking to the playground at the end of Mill Lake, which doesn't help most of you if you don't, aren't in this part of town. But everybody has a place they walk to, yeah? At some point in your life. I like to think it's about 10 minutes of walking. If you can walk somewhere in 10 minutes, you've gone about a kilometer. Unless you're the people that make Google Maps. Because the people that make Google Maps seem to think that you walk about as fast as a 97-year-old man who is missing a leg and is blind and has no sense of direction, so he walks in circles. Because that's how long Google Maps thinks it's going to take you to walk anywhere. If any of you have typed in Google Map directions with walk, you're like, oh, man, it's going to take me 7 days to get there. And they're like, next door. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But that's the way it is. Now, in bright red, I'm going to do Imperial. Why am I doing it in red? Because Imperial's stupid and it's wrong. Does Imperial have a base? No, it doesn't. It's all over the map, right? So if we say the inch is the base because it's the smallest, then the next one up would be feet, right? And if it was smartly measured, how many inches would be in a foot? 10. But it's not. It's measured stupid. 12 inches. So you say to yourself, okay, we're going up by 12. So how many feet would be in a yard? It should be 12, right? Because we're going up by 12s. In metric, we go up by 10s. But it's not. It's 3 feet or 36 inches. That makes sense. Why wouldn't we do it that way? And a mile. Well, it would make sense if it was a nice, easy number to work with, right? But it's not. It's 1,760 yards, which is 5,280 feet. But we can still do reference, can't we? If I ask you about how long something is, you have a referent, an inch. No one's going to talk to me because they don't want to talk to me. So for me, personally, my inch is the first chunk of my thumb. That's what I use. So I use the first, and it sounds weird to say, first chunk of thumb. A foot, duh, I use my foot. A yard, I use a step. And a mile is about 1,500 steps or about a 15-minute walk. 4 laps of the track. Nice. It is 4 laps of the track. Do you guys still do the 12-minute run thing in phys ed? You got to go out and run around the track? Barf. How many laps you get in 12? Just out of curiosity. Some of you have counted. Don't lie. How many laps do you get when you do a 12-minute run? If you've got a track at your school. So really only Bateman can answer this. Do they run on the track at Yale? That gravel thing around the rugby field? Do you run on it? How many laps you get? You don't do it? We used to have a track back in the day. Then we got a new school and no track. It was sad. But not really. Okay, we are going to skip a bunch of this page. We are going to do the top of this page. The top of this page begins with guessing some distances. The reason I am asking you to guess these distances is, again, I need you to have an idea of how long things are in the real world, or wide or heavy or whatever, because when you do your work, you're going to believe your calculator over your brains. Okay? So, I want an estimate. Estimate is a fancy word for what? Guess. Now, obviously, you're going to make guesses that make sense. You're not going to tell me the width of a locker is 8 miles, are you? No. So everybody, I want to see an imperial guess and then a metric guess. And notice the metric is in green because, of course, green is go, and that is good. Take about 3 guess at the width of the locker in either system. Remember, it's a guess. You can't be wrong. It just has to make sense. Madeline, a foot. Good guess. I got 1. Oh, wait, I'm going to do that in red, not green, not the good color. 1 foot. Remember, 1 little line is a foot. I should write that up there. That equals foot. 2 little lines, quotation marks, equals inches. Anybody else have another guess? They think the locker out there is wider than that? Less than that? Anyone? Good. That's a really good guess because they are actually 13 inches. Well done. Good guess. SI? Anyone guess in metric? No one? They're 30. Actually, I lie. They are 32 centimeters in reality. Anyone want to guess the height of your desk? In either one. I'll take either one. Everybody's going to give it to me in Imperial, even though I've been mocking Imperial the whole time. You're all going to use Imperial because you're going to be comparing it to your height. You only know your height in feet and inches. But that's cool. Anybody got a guess? A yard? I got 1 yard or 3 feet. Anybody else? Anybody want to guess? You agree? A yard? I think they're 33 inches tall. So again, good guess. You guys are smart. Well, the people that are guessing. Everybody else is writing down these guesses. They've already written them down. They're all giving themselves ticks because they did it right? And it's, I think they are just a hair under a meter tall. So we'll call it a meter. Oh, I should have done that in green. I like colors, as you can see. Length of the pencil with which you are writing right now. All of you wrote stuff. You all wrote with a writing utensil. How long is it? This is actually important because if you think this is 3 feet long and you do a bunch of math and you get an answer of 3 feet and the thing's supposed to be this long, you need to know that your calculator, you calculated it badly. So how long is the pencil with which you are writing? We just did a page of reference. Nobody? Because I can't do this one because everybody has a different pencil. Fine. Whatever. Mine is 5 inches, and in reality it is 13. Oh, that's supposed to be green. It is 13 millimeters. Now we get to some fun stuff. How long's an ant? It's a bad question. Why is that a bad question? Madeline. Oh, it should have been centimeters. Thank you. What an idiot I am. I'm going to do that thing that teachers pretend where they say I wrote that wrong on purpose to see if you guys would catch me and you were paying attention. No teacher has ever done that. If you have a teacher that tells you that, they are lying. They made a mistake and they are trying to cover their ass by looking because they don't want you to know that they're not the smartest person in the room. Okay? How many of you had a teacher that's done that? Put your hand up, be honest. They're lying. They made a mistake. I'm like those magicians that give away the magic tricks. I always do this. I let you know what the teacher really is doing when they do stuff. So anyway, back to the length of an ant. Why is that a bad question? This is going to be the quietest math class all summer. Nobody talks. It's going to be great. It's a bad question because why? Come on, somebody guess. Jaginder. Ants vary in size. They're little tiny ants. And those are the little ones. They're always the ones that hurt the most when they bite you. Except the biggest ant in the world. Does anybody know how long the biggest ant in the world is? Or what it is? Starts with a B. Ends with a T. No one? It's supposed to be the most painful bite in the world. supposed to be the bullet ant. Any of you heard of this thing? Guess how big they are. Guess, just guess. You don't want to know. They're an inch long. 2.54 centimeters. That big. And apparently it's the most painful thing in the world that can bite you. I don't know. I've never been bit by one. They live in Asia somewhere. Asia's a big place, so, But yeah. But then there's those little tiny red ants, and when they bite you, they hurt too. One time I was at a wedding, and my daughter was in a party dress, and I sat her on the ground to take a nice picture of her, and she starts crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? Stop crying. We want to take a nice picture. And she's crying. I'm like, Beth, stop it. Please, stop crying. We want to take a nice picture. Cry. And she starts crawling away. No, sit there. I want to take a picture. I went over. I sat her down in a pile of red ants. The little ones. Kashal. Yeah. The little ones, Kashal. The ones that really hurt. And they were all over her. And they were biting her. And I felt like the worst father ever because I was getting mad at her. She doesn't remember it. It's okay. I don't tell the story to her because I don't want her to think that I was a bad dad when she was 2. You all can, because I'm never going to see any of you again, so it's okay. But if you meet my daughter, don't tell her the story about the time I put her on an anthill and got mad at her when she was crying because she was getting bitten. Don't tell her. Height of a giraffe? Anybody want to guess? Boy giraffe, girl giraffe, don't really care. Boys are bigger. Anybody? No guesses? Biggest giraffe in the world? Take a guess. That's the whole point. It's a guess. Somebody guess. The giraffe is 100 feet tall. Is that a good guess? 100 feet. You guys are about 5.5, 6 feet tall. So is a giraffe 20 times taller than you? No, of course not. So somebody give me a guess. You're about 5.5 feet tall. How tall is a giraffe? Do some math. 20 feet. That's a good guess. An adult male giraffe is 18 to 20 feet. Good guess. Very good guess. 4 to 5 meters. Where's green? What about the length of a gym? The reason I'm doing this again is because you've got to extend this along. How big's a gym? The length of your gym at your school. Take a guess. I do have a reason. It makes sense. Nobody wants to guess? What sport is played the length of your gym? The length of the whole gym. What sport? Soccer. What else? It's my least favorite sport, even though everybody in Canada thinks it's the greatest sport in the world right now because of the Raptors. Yeah, basketball. So how long's a basketball court? Anybody know? You got some of you put your hands up and play basketball. How long does it take to get down the court? You're running. How many steps is it? How long does it take? None of you think about things like this? Just run down the court? Fine. I actually don't remember. I was hoping somebody would have a good guess. I think it's like 60 feet, but I'm not sure. So I got to leave that blank. I'll look it up while you guys are working. You could use yards. You could also use meters. I'm going to skip this page. I don't really care about any of that. Oh, wait, I do care. I care about this question. Everybody take a moment and answer that question. It doesn't matter that you don't know where the office is in this school. Think of your school. How would you measure the distance from your math classroom to the office? And the question isn't give me a distance, it's how would you do it? How could you measure that distance? And I'll give you a moment to think about it. Anybody got a guess? Well, it's not a guess. How would you do it? What would you do? What are your options? Hurtful. Parm, hit me. Okay, so you give me the distance, the unit that you would use. Absolutely, that's fine. You would measure it in meters, feet, yards. I would agree with you there. But how might you get to that number? That's what I'm asking. So obviously the office is some distance away from your math classroom. How would you find that actual distance in meters, feet, or yards? What would you do? You'd use a measuring tape. Okay? So like this, right? Patch. It was patch, right? So you do this. Would this work in this school? Why not? I got it downstairs, right? Side hodge. No. Yeah? I got it downstairs. This won't work, will it? Why? What is this good for measuring? Straight lines. Do I get straight lines down to the office? Is the office only 16 feet away? So that tape measure wouldn't be very good. Has anybody got another idea? But you could use it, couldn't you? How could you make that tape measure work, Parm? Could you by yourself measure it? How? Yep. Then go mark it, pull it. Right? Good. Perfect. Absolutely right. That would work just fine. Can anybody give me another way? Madeline. You could count your steps, right? If your steps were all the same length and you measured your step and multiplied, you could do it, right? But you could get a pretty good estimate just by counting. Okay? What else? Anybody got another way? Nobody? Nobody can think of another way? Okay. That's cool. That's cool. I personally would get some string or rope, like Hansel and Gretel, and I'd just start walking. And I'd measure the string. Because then the diagonal and all that crap doesn't matter, does it? Because it's one straight line, right? Eventually, no matter how many twists and turns I make, it's one rope. Can anybody think of a way you could measure it without ever leaving your desk? Can any of you think of a way right now, using technology, to tell me how far it is from my desk, where my ass is right now here, to the office? I don't get up ever. Can anybody think of a way to do it? Awesome. Homework question 2. HW1 is the meter. How long's a meter? HW2, measure to office without getting up. Gummy bears for anybody who comes up with the right good answers to either of them. Turn the page over onto 196. Measuring a tape measure, reading a tape measure is a very useful skill. Everyone should have it, even if you don't plan on being a carpenter. Read the question. Rulers and tape measures in construction. Why am I specifying construction? Because in Canada, we still build stuff in Imperial. We use inches and feet. So it helps to be able to read one of these. It is split into 16ths. Please notice that is a fraction. I know you're all scared to death of fractions. Every kid is scared of fractions. Even pre-calc 12 kids at the end of the year, when they are going off to university, if you ask them what's the thing you hate most in math, guess what they all say? Fractions. They're scary. So we're going to talk about this. So if this distance from 0 to 1 is split into 16ths, how much is that on a tape measure? The whole inch has been split into 16ths, so how long is that? 1/16. Each little tick on a tape measure usually is 1/16. So what then is 2 ticks on a tape measure? How many 16ths is that? 2, but we wouldn't say 2/16 because we've been to elementary school and we know when we write 2/16, Mrs. Badcrumble, your elementary school teacher, says, that's wrong! Because what is it really? It's an 1/8. It's really 2/16, but Mrs. Badcrumble would still give you 0 if you wrote 2/16, wouldn't she? Because she would want it in lowest terms. Reduce that fraction. Even though reduce means something smaller. And is 2/16 smaller than 1/8? No, of course not. So that is 1/8. So then, what's the next logical one? How much is 4 little ticks? That is 4/16 or 1/4. And how much is 8 little ticks? One, 2, 4. What's that? It's 8/16, which is a half. Everybody cool? Now notice, tape measure manufacturers are very nice to us. They have the big long lines every full inch. The next shortest lines are at the 16th, the 8/16, which is 1/2. Then 1/4, then 1/8. Everybody good? Great. I know all of you can do this. Tell me these 4, I'm the worst kind of liar, these 5 measurements in Imperial. Go. So how far is this to this arrow? That's what I'm asking you. So what's the answer? All I got to do is say a fraction. The worst thing that can happen is I say no. The best thing that can happen is I say, yeah, right on, you kicked ass. What is it? He waited patiently. He is still waiting patiently. 1/4, 1/4 of an inch. Why? Because it's 4/16. Nice job, Parm. See how good that feels? Now, what if he'd gotten it wrong? What would I have done? Sorry, man, that's not quite right. Is that crushing? No. So just try. What's this one? If that's 1/4, how long is that? How long's that? It's another 1/4, right? How long is that? 3/4, right? Which would be 12/16, wouldn't it, Rajan? Wouldn't it? It'd be 12/16. But I'm 1 tick back from 12/16. So what's this answer? 11/16. Nice, good job. So what's this one? It's 1. And how much more? So, Parham says it's 1 6/16. Would that make Mrs. Bad Crumble, your grade 3 math teacher, happy? Would it? I'm asking you. I didn't teach you grade 3. Would your grade 3 teacher have given you that as right? My grade 3 teacher wouldn't have, even though it's the right answer. What should I have said, Madeline? 1 3/8. Knowing what you know about me, you tell me that's 1 6/16. What mark do I give you out of 1? Isn't it 1 6/16? Would I give it right? I'm asking you. What do you think? You've only known me for an hour, 2 hours. What do you think I would give you? You think I'd give 0.5? How many people are with Madeline? You think I'd give 0.5 there? Be honest. Put your hand up. You, Raquel? Hurtful. What would I give? I would give 1 mark, but what would I write right beside it? Simplify next time. What if it was a final exam at the end on July 26th? What would I give you? 0, Rajan? 0? Why do you think I'm such a dink? That's hurtful. I don't think you're a bad person. I would give you 0.5 on the final. Everybody understand how this works now? Okay. What's this one? 2 13/16. Nice. And this one? 3 7/16. Madeline, you're from Bateman, right? You should go take Mr. Webster's class. You can read a tape measure. You'd get an A. Why is the top one down here super easy? Why are these 3 so easy that it should take you about 5 seconds to do it? Because they're in millimeters. And millimeters are what? SI or imperial? SI, which means they're based on 10, right? So can I use decimals? Sure I can. So what's this? 11 point what? 4. What's this? This one's really tricky. Don't screw it up. 13. What's this one? 16.7. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Why are the bottom ones difficult? Because they're back in inches, aren't they? What's different about this ruler from the tape measure I just gave you? How big is 1 tick here? 2/16. How did you know that? Because they're further apart, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 between them. It's in eighths, not 16ths. So, what is this distance? Take a moment, figure out these 3, 4 distances. And I will write it in my fun color of green. Oops. So what's this guy? 4 5/8. What's this guy? 5 1/2. What's this guy? Holy, you're on fire. What's this one? Tricky. 7 1/4. Everybody good? You can all read a tape measure now, yeah? Okay, now listen. I'm going to talk for 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to shut up for 18 minutes while you do some work. Everybody cool? Right here on the bottom of this page, you will notice throughout this book, I leave white space. That white space is where we do some extra stuff. So the first thing it sounds like I need to do is remind you of simplifying fractions. 16 over 36. Would you hand that in to me or any other teacher as the answer to a question? Why not? Because it's complete, it's the right answer, but we don't want it that way because that's yucky. We want it in simplified terms. How would you simplify that? What would you do, Damon? You could use, that's not going to be a mixed fraction. My numerator is smaller than the denominator. So what would I do to simplify that? You would divide by 4, right? So if I divide that side by 4, because these two are connected, I got to do it to both, yeah? What's 16 divided by 4? 4. What's 36 divided by 4? 9. And now you'd be done. We all remember how to do this, yes? Now, Damon, what if I gave you this? 8/5. What would you do with that? Mixed fraction. What is it? 1 3/5. Excellent. What if I gave you this? 2 7/8 plus 1/2. What would you do with that? You have a couple of choices. I'm just interested to see what your teachers in the past have done. How would you do that question? So Madeline would go 7/8 plus 1/2 plus 2. Right? Okay. That's cool. What's another way she could have done, or one could do this question? Could you change this into something? What would you do with just this? Again, this is not new stuff. I just need to see what your previous teachers have taught you. What would you do with that? You would do that multiply plus thing, right? And you would get 23/8 plus 1/2, right? So everybody can work the first step with fractions. Everybody remembers simplifying and moving them around, yeah? Okay, that's point 1. Point 2 is down here. What do I need to do here? What do I need, Sihaj? Okay, what do I need? I need the same denominator, which is 8, right? So did I change the 8? So do I change 23? No, because they're buddies. 23. Plus, did I change the 2? It's 8 now. What did I do? Times 4, so what do I have to do to his buddy? Times 4, so this is 4/8 to get 27/8. Could you hand that in to me? Would I be okay with that? Me personally? Yes. Would most of your other teachers? What would they want there? They would want simplified to a mixed fraction, right? Which would be 3 3/8. Yeah? Everybody cool? What if this was subtraction? Does anything change? No, I still find the same denominator and I subtract instead of add. I don't want to do a whole lesson on it. I want everybody just to be have it remembered, have you reminded of it. Okay? The thing that most of you screw up is you forget that add and subtract fractions need a common denominator. Now, the other thing I want to remind you of is this. That was the second thing. This is the third thing. What if I gave you this? 14/25 times 15/28. What would you do if I gave you that question? Again, don't do it. Just tell me what you would do. I want to know what I'm faced with. You can't tell me something wrong. You just tell me what you would do. You would simplify where, Damon? You would simplify 14 and 28. You'd simplify there and there, right? Because 14 is over 28. This question is the same as 14. That's the wrong pen, you idiot. Is the same as 14 over 28 times 15 over 25, isn't it? because when you multiply, order doesn't matter. So Damon says he would simplify here. What do you mean simplify? What would you do with 14 and 28? You would simplify by doing what? Because we're not reducing, we're making the same numbers, aren't we? So what would you do with 14 and 28? Saihash? You divide by 7. So this gets me 2, this gets me 4, correct? Then what would you do with the other 2? You would divide by 5 to get 3 and 5, right? Now, what would you do with 2 and 3? Or would you simplify again with 2 and 4? Does it matter? Do you think I'm the kind of teacher that forces you to do one way? I don't care what you do. You do what you need. If you simplify here again, what would you do with 2 and 4? You would divide by 2. How many 2's fit into 2, Rajan? 1. How many 2's fit into 4, Rajan? 2. Now what would you do with 1 and 3? To get 3. What would you do with 5 and 2? To get 10, and you'd be done. Now some kids might actually go 14 times 15 and get 200 over 25 times 28, 600. And then simplify these giant numbers. That's dumb. Don't do it that way. But if you like doing it that way, would I make you change? No, go ahead. That's number 3. And finally, number 4. What changes if I give you this? What's the only change that happens in number 4? Right. It becomes 18 over 32 times what? 8 over 5. The reciprocal. Reciprocal. And then we go back up to here. I know I'm going fast because you should all already know this, right? Your work now. Some fractions. 2 pages of fractions. Now, I took a little longer because nobody talked to me, and I'm only giving you 15 minutes. Now, not going to lie, these jokes are funny, but you don't have to do them. You don't have to do the whole page. Here's why. It's summer school. We have not a lot of time, yes? So, if you can do, like, for example, those 6 and you get all the answers right, do you really need to do all 18? Do you? No, because you know what you're doing. Yeah? On the next page. In regular class, I'd make you do the whole page. In regular, actually, if you only were to do one page, if you did page 198, that's got add, divide, and multiply. If you insist on doing one whole page and doing the joke, do this whole page. Or just do a few. I'll show you the right answers at 10:55 when you're back. You can check your work. If you're poopy with fractions, the next time that we have some free time, what should you do? Practice some fractions. Does everybody understand? How could you practice fractions? You could ask the kid beside you who got them all right. Or you could come and ask me, and we would do slowly on the board a few different ways the next time there's free time. Does everybody understand how this class is going to work? I believe in giving you the chance to do what you need to do. I'm not one of those people that says if you get 100% on 10 questions, you need to do 1,000 more questions. Because it doesn't change, right? Math's a pattern. If it can work once, it always works. Everybody with me? Okay, you got I lied. You have 13 minutes. Do some fraction practice. I'll write some right answers up on the board. I'll put them up just before the bell rings. You can check your work, and I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes after you're back from break to check and make sure you know what you're doing. Don't use a calculator, except to do things like simplify. Like if you have 65 over 145 and you know you have to simplify that, go ahead and use your calculator to do 65 divided by 5 and 145 divided by 5. You understand what I'm saying? If you've got one of those fancy calculators so you can actually enter fractions into and punch this in, that's not really helping you, is it? Okay? Go. I will shut up. I am sorry I spoke as long as I did.